everyone. I want to welcome you to the Primetime at the EU Library. We're really excited this morning for this collaborative partnership. Primetime celebrates the learning in and beyond the classroom here at Bethel. The learning of faculty, students, and staff, and collaboration between Friends of Bethel University, the off-campus programs and services office, and then also other various offices on campus. If you enjoyed the Primetime presentations, please consider being a friend of the library. You can learn more about being a friend of the library by visiting the library website. You can also visit the library website and to learn more about the Primetime presentations and to get access to archived recordings. The next Primetime presentation will be Thursday, February 21st. Our guest that day will be Professor Emeritus from Luther Seminary, Gracia Grindal. She'll be doing some readings from her new poetry book entitled The Sword of Eden, Mary Even Mary Speak. So now it's my pleasure to be able to introduce today's Primetime. My name is Tanden Brekke, and I get to work with the Bethel Frogtown and Summit University Community Partnership. It's a 20-year partnership that we have here at Bethel. It's a place-based partnership where Bethel intentionally builds relationships with organizations in the Frogtown neighborhood and in the Summit University neighborhood in St. Paul. Part of that partnership is student engagement. And this morning we're going to have the chance to hear from 3 Bethel students. Each of these students have had various ways of engaging in the community, from doing community-based research projects, being part of community-engaged learning classes, doing internships, working as student workers, and then also living in the community. So each of these students have engaged with the community in multiple ways over the last few years. I've asked them today to focus on a aspect of their engagement. So, actually I need to step back. Also, these students, Rita, she was an Edwin Scholar. Taz is our current Newman Civic Fellow. And Hilda will be our Newman Civic Fellow for next year. So there's a lot of beautiful wisdom and gifted students here today. I've asked each one of them to share from an aspect of what they've done. So Rita's going to share about her work this summer, being a student worker. She worked for 20 hours a week doing a variety of projects, working mostly with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. Hilda's going to talk about her, it was her junior social work internship at Irreducible Grace Foundation, another organization there in Summit University. And then Taz is going to talk about her experience living in Frogtown and being part of the Fuel House, the Frogtown Urban Living Experience. So each one of them will take that angle at their presentation. At the end, then we'll have some Q&A. So if you have some questions, start thinking about those questions now. And I told the 3 of them, if the group doesn't have questions, I got questions for them. So we'll have a great conversation towards the end. So now Rita's going to come up and share about her experience working this summer.
Thanks, Tanden. I'm Rita. I was one of the student workers this summer. I'm a senior here at Bethel, and I'm graduating in May, which I'm really excited about. So I'll just start off talking about what we were doing this summer with our group. So Hilda, Taz, and then we also had another student worker who was on our team, Don. I wanted to put this up just to give a little background of the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. It's a collaboration of urban gardens in the Frogtown and Summit University area. So we mainly worked with the Peace Garden, which is right in the middle. And this is showing the Alliance gardens, but also gardens that are affiliated with the Alliance. And so other gardens that we worked with was like the Camphor Garden over here. We did visit the Pilgrim Baptist Garden. There's the Maxfield Elementary, and just a couple of other ones that we were working with to give you some context. So working with the collaboration of urban gardens, We did a lot of weeding, watering, and planting, as you would expect. So I just put up some pictures. This is in the Peace Garden. We mainly weeded all of that out and made it look really nice and neat. So we did a lot of weeding and we're basically experts. Yeah, we got to plant a lot of the gardens, mainly the Victoria Garden. We planted everything that was in there, the box plots that were part of the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. And then we also were in charge of watering several of the gardens, so we would rotate and water weekly. So one of the main things that we were part of and did every week was a children's garden, which was held in the Peace Garden. This met every Wednesday, and it was kids from 0 to 100. We had a range of people come, and they were all coming to learn more about gardening, harvesting, planting, watering, and just the importance of food and healthy food. We were able to, so the theme for all of the children's gardens was the season of Wakanda. This was around the time that Black Panther came out, which was I think around, it was springtime. And so that theme was chosen by the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance just to present the importance of African culture and bringing in the kids from the community to learn more about various things. So we'd have guests come in who would talk about healthy habits, water filtering, solar power, and just different important things that are essential to gardening. We had Heart and Soul Academy come, which is a drumming and dancing group that provides opportunities for youth to learn about drumming and dancing. We had an astrophysicist come in, which I honestly don't remember what that is, but it has to do with space. We had a health educator come in to talk about healthy habits for the kids. And we talked about eating a rainbow, just eating a variety of fruits and veggies that are really healthy for you. We had people from the Science Museum of Minnesota come to talk about water filtering and the importance of water for gardening. And the last session, our group, the 4 students who were working there in the summer, were in charge of setting up a session for the students. So we were the ones planning what was happening that day, and what we chose was to create a Black Panther mask for the kids. And you can see in that picture, there's just a bunch of the kids with their masks on. Also, for each of the sessions every week, we'd have a snack that was made by all of us that we would eat together. And in that picture up there, you can see we're making samosas. And then we got to fry them there, which was really fun. But every week was different. So we'd make smoothies, fresh chip dip, corn, veggies, and other variety of foods that a lot of the times came from the gardens. So we harvested what we planted. Another thing that was a major part of what we were doing this summer was helping to organize events in the community. And 2 of the big ones we helped organize was the Peace Celebration in June, and then the National Afternoon Out, which was beginning of August, I think. So for the Peace Celebration, we were helping with some of the planning, which I came into towards the end because it started a couple weeks before, or a couple months before June. But we helped plan some of that and just putting where everything was going to be going. And the day of, we were helping with setup and volunteering. I was helping with some of the food prep, and other students that we were working with were doing volunteer coordinating and other variety of things that had to be done that day. So that was a big thing that took up a lot of our time, just helping to plan and organize and execute. And the other thing was the National Afternoon Out, which was a similar kind of thing. We helped plan it, set it up, and volunteer at the event. So I'll talk about some of the takeaways from me personally for the work I was doing in the summer, but for me it also goes back to when I first got connected with the partnership and first got connected with the community in the neighborhoods. So starting with when I first got connected, it was spring of my sophomore year, so a couple of years ago. The important thing throughout the time that I was engage with the community, I learned that long-term connections is really important, and there's so many benefits to it, just with creating relationships and keeping connected with those relationships. And I've also seen how short-term connections can actually be really harmful to the community, and just seeing when people come in, do what they need to do, but then leave, and there's no way of reconnecting with those people, even if the community wanted to. It's a very quick, get it done and leave kind of thing. And so for me, seeing that, I really, really wanted to be intentional about this and stay connected with the community, and I've really, really tried to do that. So I started off with doing some research with the Edgar Scholarship in the community, with Dr. Shrek, who's sitting over there. And then I was able to stay connected throughout that school year, doing some more research, but on campus. And then throughout the summer, I did the work with Tanden, and now I'm still connected, trying to do some of the service learning things going on with the Bethel and the community. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was relationships. Working in the community, you can see how everything that they do is very intentional, and it's meant to bring about connecting with other people in the community. So even just seeing the events that we're helping to plan and bring about, you can see the purpose was for connecting with other people and bringing the community together, specifically over food, which was a very important thing, just seeing how we can eat together and be together, and just share in relationships and stories and all of that. Also with the relationship aspect, just thinking about community change and maybe some of the change that can happen in our society. It doesn't have to be on a national, large scale, global kind of national scale, but it can be through those little things, the little grassroots organizations, and seeing how those can actually bring about maybe even more change than trying to do something on a large scale kind of area. And then I also want to talk a little bit about whiteness. So just going into a community that is mainly people of color, I was one of the only sometimes white person. And so to me, that really gave me the opportunity to think about, what does that mean for me? How does my whiteness work in different parts of society? And for me, that meant rethinking the normal way that white people can have the opportunity to dominate space and conversations, and how that had to be changed. And that takes intentionality and a lot of practice, just knowing that when you enter a space, often white voices are heard and sometimes other voices are not. And so for me, that meant, sometimes sitting back and listening and not always being the one with all the ideas and always talking first. So there was a lot with that I had to learn, and I'm still learning about what whiteness means for me. And so that was a really, really important piece for me to take away. So I think there's so many more lessons that I learned, and so at the end you can ask me personally, maybe if you want to know even outside of this, what I learned and what I took away. So now to Hilda, who's going to talk about her experience with internship.
Okay, so like Rita, Rita mentioned, I'll be talking about my internship with Irreducible Grace Foundation. So to get a better sense of like who they are, what they're about, I'm gonna talk a little bit about their history. So about a decade ago, the founder, Darlene Fry, which is this lady over here, she worked for the St. Paul's Public Schools. She was in administration, so more on the higher ups, and they asked her to collect information about graduation rates. And through her data, she saw massive racial disparities. And not only were the students that weren't graduating Native American, African American, or Latino, she also saw that 90% of them were in out-of-home placement at some point during their high school experience. So that means they're either in foster care, maybe a juvenile detention center, or maybe even experiencing homelessness. So she took this information back to the board and told them, okay, so what are we gonna do about it? And they said, you did what you're gonna do about it, you did the research. And she herself is a foster to adopt parent, so that definitely did not sit well with her. And in order for her to work with young adults in a way that was more effective, she actually quit her job in the St. Paul Public Schools, and in 2012 she started the Irreducible Grace Foundation to provide support for youth as they transitioned out of the foster care system. And since then, the young people that she's worked with have come together to inform and shape their work towards helping others heal from trauma. So the overall purpose of the Irreducible Grace Foundation is to create safe spaces and healing opportunities for youth of color. Something that's definitely remarkable about the young people that attend IGF and facilitate their workshops is that they want to develop more outlets to help young people who are experiencing similar life struggles as they did. So IGF does their work through, I want to say, like 2 major platforms. So they have their workshops, which they have a team of facilitators who are young adults who have experienced significant trauma. And they travel around the Twin Cities area mostly, putting on these workshops. They even came to Bethel earlier in the fall, and that was super fun. So they have like several different types of workshops, but overall, they are entirely youth-led and arts-based. The workshop series includes audience participation, poetry, skits, and performances focused on topics such as symptoms of stress, the biology of breath, identifying triggers, healing from trauma, practicing resilience, breathing techniques, and self-care. So outside of the workshops, they also have an opportunity to foster community, and that's every Sunday. They call it Self-Care Sunday. So each week they aim to provide youth of color a safe space to share a Sunday meal and focus on healing and well-being through support circles, yoga, and art. Some other activities that they do include art shares, theater workshops, and writing workshops. And oftentimes they bring in speakers, and some really noteworthy ones for me over the past semester was Sam Simmons, who came in and did a 2-part series on historical trauma, and Dr. Joy Lewis, who came in and did a workshop on radical self-care. So for my specific tasks as an intern, it varies from week to week. So I attend IGF twice a week on Self-Care Sundays. And so because of the meal aspect, we often help in like meal prep and whatever it may be that day. We often do setup, and if there's tear down, do the tear down. But overall, we're usually just invited to be participants, which is a really great experience, always. And then I attend on Wednesdays, which is when they have their leadership meetings. And so they usually ask for our feedback on how Sunday went. We did this and this and that. What did you guys think about it? And it's really fun to put our input in that way. Sometimes during that space, they also work on several parts of their workshops, and we're also able to give feedback through that as well. So as for supervision and guidance, it's been really neat to observe Dr. D and Jan Mandel work with their leadership team. They're definitely very focused on the leadership development and support. Because they work with young adults who have experienced significant trauma, whatever they have faced in their lives, sometimes or oftentimes has definitely affected their development. So it's been really neat to watch them problem solve with their staff, and also just encourage them in whatever they may be doing. Another thing that's really unique about Irreducible Grace is that almost everything that they do is run by the young people, which I think is so crucial because they are an organization that aims to foster youth voice. So, as for what I've learned, I've definitely learned a lot. Because of their work with trauma, I think that's something that has been very formative in how I'll definitely move forward with my career in social work. The definition that they really adopted and drilled into everyone is that trauma is anything that happens too much, too fast, or too soon for you to metabolize and move through. It's not a personal failure or defect, it's something that happens to a person. However, since they're so aware, even though they're so aware of their trauma and what they have gone through, they definitely have not adopted like a victim mindset. I think, if anything, everything they do is very empowering to give people, because they have the opportunity to share their own stories and to also support their community by creating spaces of healing. And that's definitely something that they're very dedicated in. Another thing that's really stood out to me is the idea of mindful body movement. Something that I've learned is that trauma is stored in our bodies, and oftentimes people think that in order to get through that, it's through therapy and like through your intellectual side, which is something that they support, but they also recognize that through either breathing exercises or yoga or whatever it may be, those definitely serve as modes of healing as well. And then my final takeaway that I'll share is that it is so crucial for people. The people that they work with are underrepresented and often misrepresented. And it's so crucial that they have this opportunity to foster their own voice. I think that if you want to work with groups that are on the margins or oppressed populations, you really need to hear the needs that they present to you. You can't go in and assume that you know what's best for them. No one knows their situation better than they do. So it's been really neat hearing different perspectives, and yeah, it's been a good time.
So, hi, my name is Taz. I am a senior at Bethel. I started engaging with Frogtown my sophomore year. I worked with Tanden at the FSU office, and I now live in Frogtown in the Fuel House, which is the Frogtown urban living experience. And so basically it is a house. I didn't have a picture of the house, and I didn't really want to put a picture of the house. But basically it is designed for students from Bethel to be engaged in the community, and not just like cohabitate in the community, but like actually live in the community. And so we also have, it's a class component, so we have a variety of community events that we can go to throughout the semester that the FSU office provides, as well as just like anything that you see basically, and then we have reflections on that of that. And it's designed to as we are engaging with the community, truly think about the systems, the biases that we bring into the community, as well as the community structures that they're already engaging in. And so basically throughout my experience with the Fuel House, I have been trying to navigate what it means to have these connections and to have this house in this community, and how can I utilize this space for the partnerships that I've already created. So the middle picture right here, it was really cool. So at the beginning of the year, we were harvesting a lot of things from the gardens. And so as a way of like utilizing all of the crops that we had, I made stew. And I invited some community folks from CSP to come over, and their CSP is a community stabilization project. And so we had a meal and we ate food, and it was really fun, and it was really cool because I think that was one of the first times that I actually utilized the things that like I planted in the ground and then ate from it. And so it was a really beautiful experience to have that, as well as with people who have helped sustain my growth in their community and has welcomed me into their community. And a big component of this semester that the Fuel House is doing is talking about the stadium. So this is the stadium that has just been built in the community and what the effects of that stadium is going to be doing to the community, gentrification, all of that. And something, it's like right over here, there's a cub, and they just redid this cub. I was so irritated. So this cub was like perfectly fine, but then like, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, they started redoing this cub, and I was like, why are they redoing it? It was perfectly fine. This cub is the bougiest cub I've ever seen in my life. There's like a popcorn thing, there's like a burrito bar. It's super fancy now. And I've seen a shift of, at the beginning of the semester, there was the cub reflected the community that it was in, and now I'm seeing more and more white folks coming into the cub and seeing that shift and hearing the shift. Even when it first got redone and all of us were coming in, all of us were like, oh, this is nice, like, shoot. And then someone was like, we better utilize this while it lasts. And that was just so sickening to me, because I was like, y'all know what's going on. Like, and the amount of like cycles that especially elders in this community have seen and gone through it. And so me, as well as my 3 other roommates, will be doing a research project of getting community census to speak on what this stadium means specifically. And so I think my story about Cub kind of reflects a very like minute experience that I experienced, and like that's just me coming into this community for the 3 years. Like, I don't have the weight of the history of growing up in this community and seeing this consistently since you were a child. Another interaction with neighbors was at the beginning of the year. I could definitely sense, like, people know we're students from Bethel, they see us coming in and out, and so I could sense this, like, I kind of don't want you here with my neighbors, and I totally recognized that, and through engaging with them, specifically the people across the street, I've really gotten to know them, and we have this huge bean bag, and they saw us carrying it in one day, and it was me and Diamond, who also lives there, and then our friend Josh, and he comes running out, and he was like, y'all got one of those big bean bags? And I was like, yeah, you want to come over? And so now, like, every, like, 3 or 4 weeks, he'll, like, come over, and we'll, like, read a book, and he'll come sit on the bean bag, because it's a cool bean bag.
I saw it yesterday. It's a cool bean
It is. It's big. It's really big. But another thing that I think was really beautiful that I've seen with the Fuel House for me was my family came up at the beginning, and my brother got to stay with me and got to see kind of what I do, and also our past has been living in, I'm from downtown Kansas City, and so we've seen cycles of gentrification and such, and so to be able to see a different community, but yet is still stuck in similar cycles, was something that both me and him were kind of deconstructing. And for me to be able to have a space in a community and be able to have organizations and partnerships that help give resources to understanding, similar to what Hilda was talking about, of the traumas that we have inhabited within our bodies, and to be able to be like, no, this is actually real and true, was kind of very helpful and I think that has been a big takeaway with this house, is for this space to be a space of healing, and a space that not only I can like breathe in, but also I can utilize the privileges that I have been given to partner in a way for the community folks to be able to come over. Another thing that we did in December was the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance does an annual Greens Cook-Off, and so the debrief of the Greens Cook-Offs was at the Fuel House, and so we all got to come, and it was a cool intergenerational exchange that folks from the Greens Cook-Off got to come and kind of see what the Fuel House was about and such and that. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown of the fuel house. That's all I have.
Okay, I'm going to invite the three of you back up here. You guys want to stand across the front here. And I want to open it up now to our audience here to ask questions of anything that you've heard or any other questions that you want to have ask. And then for the recording, we're just going to ask you guys to repeat the questions. Okay? Or maybe I can repeat the question here. I have it back in mind. So, what are some questions that people might have?
Yeah, you had a really rich experiences. It's really fun to hear about. How can you bring those to Bethel? How can the history of the partnership quite often has been its best known secret. I believe it's well known or not. It's a secret people don't know. And how can you actually bring that to Bethel and share what's going on and that affects the larger community?
So I'll repeat the question. The question is, how do these beautiful experiences that the three of you have had in Frogtown and Summit University neighborhoods, how do they get brought here to Bethel, and how are they enriching our community here at Bethel?
I can share a little bit. For me, just one of the ways I think is through like what I'm studying. I'm a sociology major. So basically ever since I've learned about the partnership, I've been doing research on some aspect of what's going on in Frogtown and in the community. So currently I'm in a senior sem of sociology class, and I'm looking at service learning and like the long-term impact of it. And so for me, it's very much about actually digging into like what is going on with the partnership, how is Bethel actually maybe influencing the community, and how is it influencing Bethel students. And so I really want to see like those tangible things that you can get through out of research. But for me, that's just one way. I don't know about you guys.
I think there are opportunities to interact with the community through the partnership, definitely. How I got introduced to the partnership was through my intro class, and we were doing service learning. And I think that could have a very profound impact on you if you are actually open to the experience and to fully engage in the community instead of just doing it as something to fulfill a requirement. So I think that if we come at it with that approach, I think it would definitely shape us more. So you don't have to be taking a service learning class to engage in the community. You could just go out there, honestly. You could go to a coffee shop, go to a library. There are ways of interacting. It doesn't need to be forceful.
Anything to add? Okay. What are some other questions that people have?
Kind of expanding on that, what about Bethel going to the community? What are some of your favorite places? What would you recommend? I mean, you mentioned some coffee shops. Are there other more specific things, like what would be good ways for us to engage, or to, you mentioned some events, or what are ways for us to find out about them, and what are ways for us to do that?
Question was about how does Bethel continue to learn about and engage with the community?
There's a sign-up sheet somewhere, and especially if you're a prof, put your name down, and we have an events page that we send around when it has a list of things that are going on in the community that profs can send their students to and let them know about that going on. And there's a lot of things that happen weekly. Every week there's every month there's also reconciliation meetings and all of these other things that are going on, and there's more details on the page. But that's one thing. But one place I think that if you want to learn more about the history of the community, there's help me with the name, the plaza?
Yeah, the plaza.
The what?
Rondo Plaza.
Rondo Plaza. which recently just went up in the fall, which just has this wall of the history of the community, especially with just before the Interstate 94 went up, and just kind of what the community looked like then, and then just throughout time. And it's a really, really rich and deep place to go to.
And that plaza is open all the time. Just Google Rondo Plaza, and you can go there and spend an hour learning with the community.
I think a great way to engage in the community is to eat food in the community. There's so many great places, and so to utilize and give back wealth to the community, I think, is super important and is necessary, especially when we talk about reparations and the traumas that this community has had. So I think one way that Bethel can help is to support the local businesses there. Go Golden Times is a great place. It's a local coffee shop. It's a beautiful, beautiful space. It's owned by people who've grown up and been in the neighborhood, and it also has some histories there too. Penumbra Theater is also a theater in the community, and they have a lot of shows and also a lot of talkbacks and things. IFA is a bomb place where you can get bombies. They're 3 for $4 on Tuesdays. Yes, so that's a great place. But yeah, there's so many restaurants and so many bookstores, and Heritage Tea House is a new Black-owned business also. They do jazz nights every so often. But yeah, Facebook has a lot of places where you can find things in the community to go to.
I have a list of caterers. I would be more than willing to share with you. They make some beautiful, great food. Other questions?
Okay, so wonderful presentations. What challenges, personal challenges, did you encounter as you engaged in this community or the communities that you encountered?
So the question is, what challenges, personal challenges, did you face engaging with the communities you worked with?
For me, I think I'm going back to the summer, being a worker in the gardens. I think something that I struggled with in the beginning a little bit was communication. I think just like growing up in the settings that I did, like everything was just so linear. Like expectation was there. At this time you're here, at this time you're there, and all that. And working with our supervisors, Melvin and Megan, they're just very go with the flow. And that's something I had to adapt to, but I think ultimately it was so beautiful because I think time was valued differently. It was more in like the interactions you had with people and less about doing work. So I think that was a good challenge.
I think for me, it was trying to like honor the space but not dominate the space, because definitely being Black in a Black community, like, yet being Black in the Black community, I do have space, yet it's not my community, it's not the community that I've grown up in. So I think my journey of engaging in the community has been how to acknowledge that. I don't want to take on the traumas and the things and say like, I'm from Frogtown, I'm from Rondo, and I have those traumas. Yet I also recognize that Black folks have a deep-rooted connectedness to our traumas, and so because of that, I can support and I can recognize the privileges, especially being here at Bethel, and utilize them in a way that's defined by the people in the community, and to offer what I have. I think that's been a line that I've been trying to navigate and still navigating of how much space I should take up in this community, and with the knowledge that I do have, what do I do with it? How do I utilize that to grow and it be consensual for the people in the community and not take on their own burdens as my own? Because I think that can become very tricky when you have these deep relationships with these people, but then also to recognize that like that's not my story to take, and that's not my baggage to deal with. I need to deal with my own in order to actually help support them.
Yeah, I'll quickly add, just similar to what Taz was saying, just not growing up in the community and like not knowing all of the history, and even with just events like the Peace Celebration, like that's been going on for like 20 years, and we're just coming in for one summer, and we have our own ideas of what it might want, like what it should look like, but we can't throw away what's been done before, or like the history of the event and what it's for and why it was put forth. And so just trying to be aware, like trying to learn about those histories and not, like Taz was saying, like dominating any of the space or the taking on the events that are theirs and not ours, to just organize and be in charge of. And I think, so for me, that's one of the things that I was really aware of when we were just working in.
Other questions? I'm gonna pause just a minute here. Okay, I'll look back to Kim.
Well, Rita, you mentioned one of the things you were wrestling with was whiteness. Do you have any advice? We have a primary white audience, so do you have any advice from what you learned or from what we can take from this?
So the question that Ken's asking is towards Rita about whiteness and whether, how
How can we learn from you what you engaged with? What advice do you have for us?
what advice does Rita have for those of us who are white?
I'd say learn about it first, maybe in a more, so I take like sociology courses, so I learn about the topic, and so like going into the community, I had a little bit of background knowledge of what whiteness is, and so like entering into those kind of spaces without any knowledge of what it means is, I think, really hard. And so for me, awareness is a big thing, like being, once you have that knowledge, maybe learning about what it means, not expecting the community to teach you about it, then maybe sitting back and sometimes observing and being aware of the space and where you're at and what's going on. It kind of brings me back to kind of meditative processes where you're just sitting and you're aware of the space. You're not doing anything, but in what you are doing something. It's really, it's complicated, it sounds weird, but just sitting and being aware. And I mean, that doesn't work in every situation, but I think learning about what whiteness is and then being aware how it's helping you maneuver in society and how you can be dominating spaces, that just being intentional in that. Does that make sense?
I'll open this question up for Taz and Hilda as well, because I think for me, being a white person, hearing about people of color reflect back to me my whiteness has been really helpful. So what, do you guys have anything you want to add to advice or input that you'd have for those of us who are white entering into these kind of engagements?
Yeah, I think it's important to like also really think of, like, we keep on saying the word dominate, and I want to like clarify, like, not even necessarily dominate with your words, but like your actual like body, your white body being in that space can be dominating to people who like have had traumas with seeing white folks take up their space and they don't have that space anymore, like our cub. And so I think it's very important to make those distinguishes and to recognize that, like, even though I'm not specifically doing something that I don't think is harmful, my actual presence in this space can be harmful because of the traumas that I've experienced. And I think that's something very important to distinguish and to dive deeper into when entering these spaces, is is it necessary and is it beneficial for me to be in this space for everyone in this space, or is it just beneficial for me? I think that's an important question when engaging with communities.
Can I quick add to that?
Yeah.
It made me think of just our intentionality with things. Sometimes we're not intentionally trying to do something, but we are doing harm. And so just with Cub, you might be just going into shop and you're not thinking about the things that are happening systemically. But when you become aware of it, what are you doing after? And I think that's really important, just noticing how maybe you're not intentionally trying to do harm, but you might be.
For me, I would say that relationship is always important when engaging in difference, but I also would caution to be respectful of those relationships. I think that sometimes you could, overestimate your relationship with someone, and that could be a very harmful situation. I think it's good to learn from people, but never learn at the expense of anyone. Their comfort, their safety, whether it be even in just their emotions. I'd say always be respectful of that. And I think that it's also important to allow yourself to be humbled. I think this for white people and people of color alike, honestly. Because we're not perfect, and it's always going to be a learning experience. Even for myself, I can say that. But just taking a step back and never making, it's good to not assume that people are, intentionally trying to be malicious, but it's also good to recognize if harm is done too. So.
We got time for one more question.
So this is kind of two-parter. First is quick and easy. Did you all live at the Fuel House?
First question is, did they live in the always live in the Fuel House?
No.
Just Taz.
Okay. So my question was, do you feel like there were any challenges, Hilda and Rita, that you experienced in working in the community but not living there? And then Taz, did you feel like living there helped you work in your more in that relationship? Did that feel more connected, I guess, because of your residence there?
So the question is, did you guys have any barriers based off of not living in the community, engaged in the community? And then Taz, by living in the community, did that break down some barriers and did that connect you?
Thank you.
I'd say definitely there were barriers. Just thinking about how sometimes there'd be cool stuff going on, but I live 20 minutes away, or 30 minutes away actually. And just thinking about how when you're living there, you have so many opportunities to be engaged with all of these things going on just during the day, So that was one thing for me, knowing that I'd come to the community, do my thing, but then I'd be leaving, and I'm not constantly there and not sometimes following through with what's going on there. So that's how I experienced it.
For me, I'd say I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure, I'm not too sure if it would have been as different of an experience. I think it would have been a different experience. Because if I were living in the community, I think that I'd definitely be more in touch with the happenings. I was only there a couple hours a day, and I think the structure was good in the sense that people, the main garden that we were in, the people up and down the street knew that there were students that worked there every summer. So I think that I didn't feel like I was undercover or anything like that. I felt like people knew what was going on, so that was good. But I think, we tried to stick around if we could, hang out at Golden Time, or we go get bondies. So I think try to something.
Yeah, I think living has definitely helped. Just because I'm there, so like it's definitely like helpful. Yet I also still feel weird about living in the community and taking up that space when I know like there's folks who've grown up there that don't have homes, and like I have this home that I feel they should have. I don't know. And so I think it definitely has helped my engagement and has helped me be able to like see the happenings and to be more ingrained in it. Yeah, I still think there's barriers, and I'm working through living in this space.
Let's give these students a round of applause. I've got a couple things I want to let the group know as we wrap up. There is a sign-up sheet, like Hilda said, on the back table. So if you want to learn more, please put your name and phone number, email. There's also these brochures in the back. You can grab one of these talk about the partnership. And then here's a flyer specifically for the field house. We're accepting applications for the field house through the end of this week. And then we'll be selecting students after that. So those are the details. Now I want to thank the three of you. This, for me, I sat back today and just soaked it in. I'm so proud and humbled by the three of you. Hilda, I'm excited for next year, you being a senior, moving into the Newland Fellowship, and I also have some other plans that I'm going to try to lure you into. We'll see how this all works out. And I'm also trying to figure out what does life look like post Rita and post Taz. I really am. You two have made this partnership so rich these last few years, the ways you've invested, poured your heart into it. Holy cow, we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you. So thank you for your love, your energy, and all of the things you brought to the partnership. So thank you.
Tanden, can we also thank you for your work?
Thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate the support and all the beautiful energy in the room here. Have a good day.